Sacramento Community Police Review Commission was at City Council today to talk about police policies and procedures after Clark's death. The commission says they have many questions they want answered, including why officers muted their body cameras. The department's chief says in the future, officers cannot turn off a camera without permission, but before the shooting, there were not clear rules as to when an officer can or cannot turn off the microphone, only the camera itself.
It wasn't until recent events that we realized that needed to be addressed. So in order to address that policy shortcoming, unintentional policy shortcoming, we put out kind of an emergency directive to correct that behavior while we look at best practices, and we'll redefine that.
The commission says it plans to meet next month after reaching out to the community to try and figure out what recommendations they will give to City Council. Now to this, there's new pushback tonight from the California Police Chiefs Association against possible changes at the state capitol to use of force rules across the state.
This legislation, as proposed, puts communities at risk.
The proposed changes come in the aftermath of the Stephon Clark shooting, and CBS 13's Steve Large is at the Capitol with the concerns a dozen local police chiefs are voicing tonight.
Keep your hands up!
A police use of force simulator was one of the tools officers showed reporters inside this training facility, designed to show how quickly a confrontation can become violent for officers responding to calls for service.
The way that we can de-escalate that is what we want to try to do.
Police chiefs from across Northern California came together here to oppose a proposed bill that would raise the standard for legal review of California officers in deadly use of force investigations.
We find ourselves dumbfounded that legislation of this magnitude was introduced without consulting law enforcement stakeholders.
Current law allows officers to use reasonable force against a suspect. The proposed legislation would change that to necessary force.
And the concern of necessary is that the police that are sworn to protect and serve the communities are going to be expected to exhaust all possible alternatives in hindsight. That's unreasonable.
Vacaville Police Chief John Carli is a tactics expert. He has viewed the Sacramento police body cam video of the Stephon Clark shooting that sparked the proposed legislation and says the video alone is not enough to judge whether the shooting was justified.
Having a hypothetical of was it right or wrong is too simplistic. It's far more complicated than that.
The new legislation was announced earlier this month, with Clark's family standing beside the lawmakers writing the bill.
This law, we think, will help prevent needless loss of life.
A tragic confrontation now leading to a push for statewide policy change and pushback from these law enforcement leaders. And actually, this new use of force legislation hasn't even been published yet. It's set to go to the public for the first time next week and start in the Senate Public Safety Committee.
Steve Large reporting live for us tonight at the state capitol. Thanks, Steve.